Good morning, everybody. Hope you're okay. Here we are ready for our next day on metric units. So for our Fab 4 today, I thought we would have a recap of some of the skills we've been learning. So pause the video, give yourself 4 minutes and then come back and we'll go through the answers together. Okay, so first one, number 1 with 7 takeaway 2.34. Hopefully you will have remembered here that you need some extra zeros, some placeholders, so you can line up this calculation correctly to take away. So you would have needed to taken 1 off the 7 and given it into the tenths column, and then that would have needed to give 1 to the hundredths column, and then you could have done your takeaway to give you an answer of 4.66. Number 2, 0.43 times 1,000. Now, hopefully here you have used your place value chart where you will have put your hundreds, tens, ones, and your decimal point in. And remembering that if you're timesing by 1,000, you've got 3 zeros, so everything's jumping 3 places larger to give you an answer of 430. Now, to calculate 35%, do you remember we always said, let's find 10% first. So to find 10% of 60, we divide it by 10, which gives us an answer of 6. Now, if we want to get 30%, because I'm going to think, well, 35 is made up of 30% and 5%. I'm going to think, well, from 10% to 30%, I have times by 3. So I need to times my answer by 3, which will give me 18. Now, how do I find 5%? Well, again, I go back to my 10% and I think, well, from 10% to 5, I've divided by 2. So I've got to now divide this answer by 2, and that gives me an answer of 3. So 5% is the same as 3. So to find 35%, I've got to combine these answers and add them together, which will give me a final answer of 21. Now, finally, for number 4, to add these together, they need to be in the same form. Now, the way I would have done this is think, well, I know that in my memory bank, 3/4 is the same as 0.75 as a decimal. So then I can do 0.75, add 0.2. If I need to, I could add as a placeholder, because sometimes that might help me visualize that better. So 0.75 and 0.20 would give me an answer of 0.95. Okay, so what are we learning about today? We are converting metric measurements today. And for our Wilf, we're going to be saying, I can convert between different units of measure. Now, to do this, I have to be able to multiply and divide by 10, 100, and 1,000. And also, I need to remember how many of each unit are in other units. So I mean by that, how many grams are there in 1 kilogram? How many meters in a kilometre? And so on. So for our Discover today, let me move me out of the way a little bit here. We are going to be looking at this building site where Toshi is building some houses. Now you can see he's got a bucket which holds 9.25 litres and a block of cement that is 40,500 grams in weight. Now it says for our question, how could you label the cement and bucket unit using different units of measurement? Now we can see over here on our chart that we have a reminder. So in 1 kilogram, there are 1,000 grams. 1,000 millilitres is the same as 1 litre, and 100 centimetres is the same as 1 metre. Now you can see up here, this is a really good fact to remember. So if I'm converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply. So that means if I had 2 kilograms and I wanted to put it into grams, I would times by 1,000 to put it into grams. And on the other way round, if I wanted to convert from a smaller unit to a larger unit, I would divide. So if I had 2,000 grams and wanted to put it into kilograms, I'd divide by 1,000. So that will help you remember, am I dividing, am I timesing? Which way round has it got to be? So let's have a look then, first of all, at our block of cement. Now we want to put this into a different unit of mass. So the other unit of mass, at the moment we are in grams, so we want to look up here and put it into kilograms. Now if we're starting in grams and we want to put it into kilograms, do you remember that we said earlier, going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, we have got to divide. So our sum is 40,500 divided by 1,000. Why am I dividing by 1,000? because there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So I want to put this into kilograms. So I'm dividing by 1,000. Grams is a smaller unit of measure, so I'm dividing. So I can use my place value chart to help me. Do you remember we're dividing by 1,000 like we did in our warm-up? There are 3 zeros in 1,000, so everything is moving 3 places smaller. You can see that on the place value chart. The 4 tens of thousands have jumped 1, 2, 3 places smaller, as have all the others. And remember, you jump around the decimal point. We don't need to land on that. That isn't a place. If we like the 5 here from the 500s will have gone 1, 2. Now, some people will have plopped it on here, but no, it has to jump around there and it will land as place 3 into the tens column. So we can say that 40,500 divided by 1,000 is 40.5. So 40,500 grams can be written as 40.5 kilograms. Now let's have a look at the bucket. The bucket is starting in litres, and what's the other units of measure? Is millilitres. So this time we are timesing by 1,000 because litres is a larger unit of measure than millilitres. So in order to put them into millilitres, we have to multiply by 1,000. Okay, again, let's have a look at our place value chart. We've put our 9.25 on there. We're timesing by 1,000, okay, which has 3 zeros on there. And so everything is jumping 3 places larger. So our answer here is 9,250. So 9.25 litres can be written as 9,250 millilitres. So what you've got to be thinking of really carefully is, what is my conversion? How many of that smaller unit are there in the larger unit? And do I need to divide or multiply to do that conversion at that time? Now, the piece of wood, Toshi said, was between 1.2 and 1.3 meters long. So the question is now asking, how many centimeters long could that piece of wood be? So we've now got to convert from meters into centimeters. And we need to look at this and see that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Now, meters is the larger unit and we're moving into the smaller unit. So again, we have to multiply. And this time for our 1.2, we're timesing by 100. Now, do you see there are 2 zeros? So this time our 1.2 would jump 2 places larger. Now, I thought it would be good for me to model how to draw your own in case you're a bit unsure, you can't remember. Here's my place value grid. And I'd be thinking, right, so I've got 1.2 meters. I'm going to put that on my grid. I'm timesing by 1,000. There's 1, 2 zeros. Everything's got to jump 2 places larger. So my 1 is going to jump into the hundreds column. My 2 jumps around the decimal and into the tens column. Oh, now what's happened here? There's a space, isn't there, in the ones column. Now, if I just left it like that, it would look like the answer said 12. And that's not right, is it? Because the 1 is in the hundreds, the 2 is in the tens. It's really important that I put a placeholder of a value of a 0 in that ones column, because that way I get the correct answer of 120 centimeters. If I hadn't put that 0 in, it would look like 12 centimeters, and that would be the incorrect answer. So be really careful with that, that if you are looking at your multiplying numbers or dividing numbers and there is a gap, you must make sure you put your 0 in to fill that space. Similarly, when you did 1.3 times 100, you'd have the same thing. We have to pop that 0 into our ones column. So 1.3 times 100 would give us 130 centimeters. So we can say the piece of wood is somewhere between 120 and 130 centimeters long. So it could be 122, 127 centimeters, anywhere between those two values. Okay, so let's have a look at our think together. Might be a good idea for you to pause the video at this point, have a go at doing this yourself, and then coming back to see if you've got the answers correct. So let's have a look. How many litres of paint does the tin hold? Now we can see that the tin is in millilitres and it wants us to convert into litres. Now millilitres, they are the smaller units of capacity. So you've got lots lots of little millilitres that make up to get to a litre. So in 1 litre, we would have 1,000 millilitres. Now this is talking us through the steps. So it's saying here, the smaller unit, the millilitres, is going into the larger unit. That's what we're trying to change it into. So we must divide. Now a little recap, 1 litre is the same as 1,000 millilitres. So divide by 1,000. So 4,800 divided by 1,000. Now we're dividing by 1,000, therefore everything is moving 3 jumps smaller because there are 3 zeros on our 1,000. So 1, 2, 3 smaller. So that would give us an answer of 4.8. If you're not entirely sure, here is a little chart to show you how all of that has jumped 3 places smaller. So we can see now that the tin contains 4.8 litres of paint. So we started in our smaller units. Now to convert it into the larger unit of the litres, we've had to divide it by 1,000. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. We're starting this time at the larger unit of measure. So we've got 2.75 metres this time. Now this talks us through again. If you'd like to pause the video, that's fine, and then come back through when I talk our way through the answers. So we're starting at metres to centimetres. Now, because we've got metres as our starting value, they are the larger unit of measure. If you're confused with a way around of thinking about this, think of a metre stick. A metre stick is very large. You've got 100 centimetres inside one stick. So if I'm starting with 2.75 metre sticks, that's a long distance. And I now want to know how many centimetres are there in that length of 2.75 metres. So this time I'm starting with a larger unit and I want to know how many of those little smaller units there are inside that length. So therefore this time I need to multiply. So I know that 1 metre is the same as 100 centimetres. So I've got to times by 100 centimetres this time. So 2.75 times by 100, okay? So I'm timesing by 100, 2 zeros, so everything's jumping 2 places larger. Therefore, that's the same as 275 centimetres long. So my hose, when it's 2.75 centimetres, is the same as 275 centimetres. I hope that's nice and clear and makes sense. Now, finally, for our think together, you've got to look at these and decide which of these conversions require you to divide by 1,000. Now, if we're dividing, that means it's probably starting from a smaller unit and it wants to get to that larger unit. So first of all, let's think millimetres to centimetres. Now that is starting. Millimetres are smaller than centimetres, but we have got, if I had 1 centimetre, I would have 10 millimetres. So I am dividing here, but to go from millimetres into centimetres, I've just got to divide by 10, which would take me to 600 centimetres. So this one hasn't required me to divide by 1,000. Now 500 grams to kilograms, yes, I need to divide because I'm going from the smaller unit of grams into the larger unit of kilograms. Now how many grams are there in a kilogram? Let's remind ourselves. So 1 kilogram is the same as 1,000. Now, so I've got to divide 500 by 1,000. So this one is asking me to divide by 1,000. So if I divide this by 1,000, everything's jumping 3 places smaller. So this is the same as 0.5 kilograms, so half a kilogram. So 500 grams is the same as half a kilogram. That's another good one to put into our memory bank. Now 6.5 litres to millilitres. Now this is our larger unit. So obviously this time we're timesing. So this one isn't going to divide by 1,000. So what we're going to do this time is we've got to think, well, if I've got 1 litre, how many millilitres is that? Well, I've got 1,000 millilitres. That milli is the giveaway in a litre. So I'm going to times this by 1,000. So 6.5 times 1,000, everything's jumping 3 places larger, isn't it? Because I'm timesing. It's going to give me a final answer of 6,500 millilitres. All right, so the only one here which required me to divide by 1,000 was the second one. lots of different steps to think about in that calculation. Okay, so lots to think about today, and I know that a lot of you do find converting measurements quite tricky. Now, the key to converting these is that you get in your head all of the different ways that things are happening. So, are you going from a larger unit to a smaller, from a smaller unit to a larger? Do I know how many grams there are in a kilogram, meters in a kilometre, centimetres in a metre, and so on? You can always come back to the video to help you through. Power Maths talks you through, and it does help with which way you're going to start with. And obviously, if you get confused, please drop me a message to Dodo, and I'll do my best to give you some help. So working on pages 103 to 105, and the challenge is here if you'd like to do any extra. Good luck, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.